This is reposted.
Larry's out. Brandon Doble is in. We talk about you all the time on the show. Brandon Doble has a podcast called How I Got That Way. Check it out. Google it. It's on Podbean. It's on Spotify. Are you on Apple Podcast?
Oh, yeah. I'm on everything.
We're
I'm
on
like
everywhere
I'm
you
everywhere.
can get podcast. Thank you so much for being with us today and filling in Larry's 5'9" shoes.
5'10" from Whittier. Come on,
Yeah.
you know the deal.
So today we have a quote from Diane Bell. She's a Sundance award-winning screenwriter and director, and a lot of people I know in Los Angeles follow her, and kind of what she does is daily inspirations for filmmakers and screenwriters, but I think this can be extrapolated to other parts of life. And she says, before you can expect other people to bet on you, first, you have to bet on yourself. And I think that's so true. I think that's like fake it till you make it, and I have a lot of examples of this in my life, but what do you think about this?
I feel like you threw me a softball, honestly. I was like, oh, Andrew, really? I love the quote. I mean, I think it's just, when I read it, I was like, of course.
Yeah.
You have to believe in yourself, or, you're never going to be successful. Well, I shouldn't say you're never going to be successful, but it's going to be a lot harder to be successful. And I think the other thing is, that I remember reading somewhere once that it's like, if you're afraid of success, it's as bad as being afraid of failure. And so that's kind of like, if you don't believe that you're going to be successful, even if it's a long shot, then what's the point?
Yeah, I think a lot of the quotes we look at are obvious, but it's like a good reminder. And when I read this, I thought about you. You played college football, and there's got to be I played football as well, but there's got to be some sense of the amount of confidence you carry yourself with. Like, you line up against someone else, and if you put on the airs that you're going to defeat the other person, like, you're more likely to, rather than lining up being like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. So like, what do you think what was your experience playing football?
Well, I say college football, barely played. No, I did.
Well, maybe you didn't bet on yourself.
No, it's funny you say that. I don't think I can ever remember a time where I was intimidated by a guy that I went across the line. Never, not once. I mean, I was like, wow, that guy's good, and this is going to be a tough game or whatever. As the old coach, I'm sure your coach said that, hit him hard first and set the tone for the game. But I never at one time was like, I am afraid of this person, or I don't believe I could beat them. There were times where guys were definitely better than me, and it was a battle. But right. I think that when you get to that level, you got to have some confidence in yourself, or you're doomed. It's like being a batter, and you're like, this pitcher's going to get me no matter what. I mean, you got to get in there. It doesn't matter if he's better than you. You've got to believe that you can do it, or you're not going to do it.
Yeah, it's going to end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy where like, oh, this guy's going to strike me out, or this guy's going to beat me out in this promotion or whatever. And then like you kind of make it end up getting there. And I guess applying this to the acting profession, I moved to LA and started going on auditions, and I'm nervous, and everyone's nervous, and you go in, and I've had the opportunity a couple of times to be on the other side of it where I've been a producer or casting different things. And it's palpable seeing the people that walk in with confidence. And so how can you expect a casting director to pick you to be in a role if you don't walk in saying, I'm the best person for this job, like, you should pick me? And I think it applies to like a job as well. If I was hiring someone to work for me and they're like, well, I guess I could do the job, versus, yeah, I can do this and you should pick me. I think that's just what you should walk into every room saying, I'm the best person in this room, whether it's true or not. Like, it's going to help.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit, Andrew. Since Larry's
As it was
not
coming
here,
out of my mouth,
back.
I felt it.
I only say that is that I don't think there's anything wrong with saying I might not be the best X, whatever it is. Like I play like a little beach guitar. I love it. It's fun. I'm terrible. I'm not good at it, but I can look at it like guitar, a little beach guitar. Like 3-chord guitar, right. And you go and you see somebody who's a really, really good guitar player.
Right.
You say, wow, that person's a really good guitar player. But it doesn't mean that I couldn't still play guitar and do well. I mean, I totally agree with you on like walking in and believing you can do it. But I think there's this level of, if you're just saying, oh, I'm the best, when you're really not, there's also a false sense that happens to you, which you got to be careful of, because then you're not really preparing yourself because you're cocky, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, then you can become an abrasive person that people don't want to work with. Another thing I don't know much about, but I know you did. You had a startup in like 2007, 2008.
Olsen loves to talk about that one.
to some extent, you had to bet on yourself to get other people on board. Like, you were in to a certain point that, like, you're not going to go to fundraisers or investors saying, "Hey, I have this idea. Will you fund 100% of it?" Like, did you have skin in the game, or I guess what was your startup?
Well, that was a great learning experience, actually. I think I would do it totally differently now. I think that what I learned from that startup experience is that you could jump into the deep end of the pool and think, well, I can swim, when you can't. And that's just as dangerous as saying, I'm not, I'm good, or whatever, like the quote said. But I think with that startup experience, it made me learn, it made me realize you shouldn't be afraid to fail just because you think you might fail.
Right.
You could say, both you and I do a podcast. I mean, who knows what can happen with it? But if you don't ever take a jump into the deep end of the pool, you're never going to know. And that's what my experience with that podcast. I didn't know anything about startups before that startup. Now I know, enough to be dangerous, and it was a great experience, but I didn't have control in that situation. I think that's another piece of this puzzle, is that you have control over the reposted podcast. I mean, you ultimately have control over it. And that's important if you're going to be creative, because when you could be the best in the world, but if you don't have any control over it, you maybe nothing you do will make it work. So I think that's what I learned, is being in control to the degree that you can is important.
Yeah. And just, there's no risk, no reward. So when you bet on yourself, you're taking a chance, and you could fail, or you could have Jeff Bezos level success. Like, you never know what it's going to be. It's probably going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah. And I don't think I think anybody that's really has that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that's what it takes to do something like Reposted or anything else, is that you've got to kind of have that, I'm going to take a chance and we'll see what happens. I think there's also the other side. A friend of ours likes to say, "Oh, no one's listening. No one will ever listen. It's never going to go anywhere." And I'm always like, well, then what's the point? Like, if you don't ultimately believe that it's valuable what you're doing, and even if it only reaches 10, 15 people, who cares? So I think that's something that to look at, is like, if you're just saying, "Oh, no one will ever listen to this show," then you've already defeated yourself.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, even you're doing it and you're saying, "Oh, you're not really going to like this," or the person that apologizes before the meal, before they serve it to you, like, it's dead on arrival.
Yeah, this is horrible. You're really not going to like this one. Yeah, you're not going to like it if you tell them that.
Yeah. Well, if you guys have a post you'd like us to further explore, please follow How I Got That Way on any way you can find podcasts. Thanks again for joining us, Brandon. I'm Andrew Keller, for Missing Larry Olson and Brandon Doble, saying thanks for stopping by.